Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to Stately Von Manor. And today it's Wednesday, Epic Comic Book Day. This is the day where Steve Donoghue and I have our world's finest team up. On our respective channels, we will talk about a certain comic book subject or graphic novel or something. I'll give my take on it, he will give his take on it. And today we're talking about this great comic book. This is Superman. Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. This is a really interesting little graphic novel. It's a little one. It's only 2 issues worth, but this is great. It requires a little bit of backstory. So 1986, DC Comics had the Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was supposed to jumpstart DC Comics continuity. It was an event that was supposed to clean up DC Comics history so they could have a new start, so new readers can jump on board and not be burdened with all of that comic book history that's just so burdensome. And so they did that, and part of that was rebooting Superman. So basically they hired well-known comic book artist John Byrne to redo Superman, to reboot Superman. And he did that in his mini-series that started off, it was The Man of Steel, and that rebooted Superman. It was a mini-series, it was a 6-part mini-series, and that went into a new #1 issue of Superman, and the new #1 issue of Superman, and then they had Adventures of Superman, another comic book that Marv Wolfman was writing that continued the numbering system of the original Superman comic, and Action Comics. But all of it was with a fresh origin, new continuity. So basically all of Superman's backstory was wiped out and restarted. So Julius Schwartz, who was the editor of Superman up to that point, his time was coming to an end. His version of Superman was coming to an end and about to be restarted into a new John Byrne Superman. So he had to decide what he was going to do to end his run, to end the run of the Superman that has been going on since the golden age of comics. And so he decided he would do his last 2 issues, his last issue of Superman, his last issue of Action Comics. They would be the last Superman story. He would end his run of Superman with the end of Superman. Because that's what this was, basically. Because every issue of Superman up to this point was all of a sudden, they were all non-canon. They were all imaginary stories. The old Silver Age Superman comics every once in a while would have an imaginary story, a story that would happen outside of continuity, just to see what would happen if some weird situation happened, like if Superman died or something, or went back to Krypton or whatever. And so now all of the Superman stories were imaginary stories, because the new Superman that John Byrne was doing was going to be the canon Superman. So Julius Schwartz decided to end with this 2-part story, which is brilliantly written by Alan Moore. And the artwork is by Curt Swan, who is the classic Superman artist. If you read Superman in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, you read Curt Swan comic books, because he drew Superman forever. So it was really appropriate that he did these last 2 issues. Really, these last 2 issues wouldn't have worked probably unless Curt Swan did the artwork. As strong as the story was, I think you needed Curt Swan on these books to give this story the impact that it had. I didn't discover this story right away. I started reading because I had stopped reading Superman when I was a kid, and I started again when I was 15 when this came out. And I missed this completely. And so I found this much later after I had already started reading some Silver Age Superman comics and some Bronze Age Superman comics to kind of catch up. Then I found out about this. And when I read these two issues, they really had a tremendous impact on me because it's an impactful story. It is all the Superman characters that you know from the Silver Age and the Bronze Age. But it's a very 1986 story in that it's very dark. It has really intense moments. It's very violent. I'm going to spoil some of this story for you, just so you know, because it's hard to talk about it without spoiling it a little bit. I'm going to read the initial part that came out in the beginning of the first part of the story. This is an imaginary story, which may never happen, but then again may, about a perfect man who came from the sky and did only good. It tells of his twilight, when the great battles were over and the great miracles long since performed, of how his enemies conspired against him, and of that final war in the snow-blind wastes beneath the northern lights, of the women he loved and of the choice he made between them, of how he broke his most sacred oath, and how finally all the things he had were taken away from him save one. It ends with a wink. It begins in a quiet Midwestern town, one summer afternoon in the quiet Midwestern future. Away in the big city, people still sometimes glance up hopefully from the sidewalks, glimpsing a distant speck in the sky. But no, it's only a bird, only a plane. Superman died 10 years ago. This is an imaginary story. Aren't they all? That line, aren't they all, tells you that all the Superman stories up to this point are now imaginary stories. This is an imaginary story, but this is the story that ends all those stories. So it's not really imaginary. Really, this is the end of the Superman that you knew up to 1986. Which gives it an impact when you read it. Because you realize it's not imaginary if you're considering all the stories up to this point, being canon up to this point. So that's very confusing, but you know what I'm saying. And Kurt Swan does a rock solid job. I think George Perez does the inking in the first part. Early on, Superman is outed finally. It is revealed that Superman and Clark Kent are the same person. And suddenly all of his enemies start showing up, becoming much more violent than they've ever been before. And Superman realizes that something is going on. First of all, his old friend Pete Ross is murdered. And he's murdered by the Toy Man. And was it the prankster, the trickster? I forget his name. But yeah, so he goes and gets them. But they have never murdered anybody before. So something's going on. He realizes right away that something is going on. His enemies are suddenly becoming much more dangerous. Like in this part, Superman says, I don't know. It isn't rational. It's just, well, if the nuisances from my past are coming back as killers, what happens when the killers come back? He knows something's up. And at this point, a lot of his enemies have just been gone for a while. But suddenly we find Lex Luthor wandering around in the north looking for, he's looking for Brainiac. And he finds Brainiac. And Brainiac immediately hooks himself up to Lex Luthor's head and takes control of his body in a very creepy way, which makes Lex Luthor kind of a zombie. This is already pretty dark for a Superman comic, and it just gets darker. the Metropolis is attacked, and Superman has to defend the newspaper where he works, the Daily Planet, which is under direct attack. And Superman realizes that suddenly, now that his identity is outed, and everybody, all of these villains seem to be coming after him, he needs to retreat and take everybody that he cares for back to his Fortress of Solitude to protect them. And he realizes that he's going to have to make a last stand at the Fortress of Solitude. There's a really interesting part where the Legion of Superheroes shows up conveniently to talk to him, and he realizes that, you know, they're there, and they bring Supergirl back with them, who had just died recently in the crisis. So she's dead, but she doesn't. This is Supergirl from the past, so she doesn't know her fate. And it's just a really interesting scene. And Superman knows that his days are numbered. He's figuring out that he's not going to survive whatever's coming. And you can kind of tell that just from the way things are going, and also from this visit from the Legion. The Legion knows Superman's history. And so they know that this is Superman's last stand. His last battle is coming up. And Krypto, the super dog, shows up. And Krypto has been gone for some time. And there's this very touching scene where Superman gives in to some stress here because he knows that that it's all over. And whatever happens, he's probably not going to survive. And there is a last stand at the Fortress of Solitude. And it's really grim. It's really violent. You have this scene where Lex Luthor gains control of his brain for just a moment, and he begs Lana Lang, who has taken on her old superhero identity, to kill him, and she does. A lot of our old friends from Superman comic books do not survive this story. It's really dark. Whether Superman survives or not, you have to read the story to find out. And if you ever read comic books at all, or have any interest in Superman, you need to read this. Because it really is a brilliant finish to the original Superman comic books. Just extraordinarily well done. Very well written. Very much of its time, but at the same time, it's paying homage to all of the Superman comic books that came up to this point. Really great story. So yeah, Superman, whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow? That's all I have to say for that one. I will catch you next time. Be sure to check out Steve Donoghue's video about this comic. Okay guys, bye now.